arrived at, what time did we arrive? 5 o'clock.
So it's not too bad then, not the 30 hours?
No, it's cool. We've had things to eat, we're walking along quite fast, so we're feeling quite optimistic about getting there before the tube stops.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for speaking to us. Let's see if we can get some more voices. Excuse me, did you always know that you would be coming today?
Yes, I think so, definitely. We love the Queen. Real royalist, so yes.
Have you come from far?
Cambridge and Surrey.
Surrey as well. And what are you expecting to feel when you're inside the...
Very emotional. Seeing the cortege go past, it made me very teary. She was a wonderful woman, but so all the royal family, aren't they?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you for speaking with us.
Thank
you
you.
very much. Let's get another thought now. Excuse me, have you come far?
From West London.
From West London?
Yeah.
And how are you expecting to feel when you're inside?
I'm so happy to see her, to Queen. Yeah.
Thank you.
So there's a real mix of emotions here. Sadness, happiness to see. Excuse me, have you come far today?
No, I'm from South Wales,
From South Wales? Have you come all the way from South Wales for this?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
And what made you feel like it was important to come?
She'd been on the rain for so long, I thought I'd come and do something about it. You know?
Are you expecting to feel emotional in there? How's the queue felt?
Yes, all right, it's gone very well, yeah, the queue's gone good, Nice sight of London, and the weather's all right.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you for talking with us. Thank you. We're from GB News.
What?
GB News.
GB News.
Yeah. Let's see if we can get another thought for you now. Excuse me, how's the queue felt for you?
Long, very, very long.
But worth it?
Yeah.
Will be.
And what are you expecting to feel like inside the hall?
Sad.
Sad, very emotional to be fair. I mean, it's been the only monarch ever since I was born. Since my parents are born, it's been the only monarch, so it's been a bit of a weird week, really.
Yeah.
You never think to feel like this sort of emotion for someone you don't know personally, but haven't been the only the only constant in this country my entire life. You do feel emotional.
Really heavy moment. Yeah. Well, thank you for speaking with us. How have you...
The queue, well worth it. It's been really long, but it's history, isn't it? So I've got to see it.
Hi, Tom.
Hi.
Well done. Great day.
Thank you. Lovely to meet you. Well, there we go. A flavour of some people. I'll hand back to you, Nigel. But honestly, I could do this all evening. So many people coming here to pay their respects.
And Tom, we could watch it all evening because it's absolute magic. It's wonderful. Thank you, everybody. I hope we've done our best tonight to explain to you everything that has gone on today, and we'll keep on doing that right up to and including the funeral on Monday. That's it from me. I'm back tomorrow at 7. Now, let's go to, and hey, if the queues are only 3 or 4 hours, let's go to the all-important weather.
Hello, I'm Alex Deacon with your latest weather update. A dry, fine day for most on Thursday. There will be a few scattered showers around, chiefly across Scotland, and a strengthening and rather chilly northerly wind developing. That is pushing away this weather front that brought some wet weather early on across the far south. High pressure is moving in, but it's bumping up against low pressure, and the two are developing, causing this northerly breeze. That's bringing some showers across northern Scotland overnight. Otherwise, though, most places dry. Quite a lot of cloud across eastern England. That will help to keep the temperatures up here. Elsewhere, it is looking like a fairly chilly night, certainly compared to many recent nights. And across Scotland, rural areas will be well down into single figures. So a chilly-ish start to Thursday, quite a grey start for eastern England. Might just be 1 or 2 showers here. We'll certainly have some showers through the day across northern Scotland, some heavy ones likely, and maybe 1 or 2 filtering down through the central belt, and perhaps the odd shower for Northern Ireland. But most places won't see those showers, certainly for much of England and Wales, dry and bright. So a fresher feel, less humid compared to recent days. We could still get over 20 Celsius in the south, but generally it is turning quite a bit cooler, especially as this wind picks up along the east coast through Thursday night and into Friday, bringing more showers across northern Scotland and a few into easternmost counties of England. And that wind, as I say, will be pretty noticeable on Friday, bringing clouds, some heavy showers and a real chill. Elsewhere on Friday, again, a fresh start, but many places dry and bright with sunny spells. Just a small chance of 1 or 2 scattered showers for Wales and maybe Northern Ireland. But you will notice that drop in temperatures by Friday afternoon, struggling to get much above the mid-teens in many places, and feeling especially cold on those North Sea coasts. 13, 14, add on that wind, it will feel even colder. That wind slowly eases through the weekend. A lot of dry weather to be had, but it will be fresher than it has been of late. Goodbye.
Yes, hello everybody. Another fantastic show from Nigel Farage. They're really encapsulating the mood of the nation. Good evening, everyone. I'm Patrick Christys and I am standing in, of course, for Mark Steyn. It's been another momentous day in central London, full of unity, emotion, historic memories as well, that will live in our minds forever. The Queen now lies in state at Westminster Hall after a moving service conducted by the Archbishop of Canterbury and attended by the new King and the royal family as well. Tonight, we'll reflect on the last 12 hours of events with our correspondents and guests from right across the United Kingdom. And importantly, of course, we want to hear from you as well. Let us know how you will be remembering Her Majesty the Queen. But maybe you've decided to join the long queues yourself to pay your personal respects. Tom Harwood is diligently trying to, well, essentially accost people in the street as they pay their respects to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Really interesting. If you are a bit on the fence at the minute about whether or not to go down, I thought there was a couple of comments there, which were that, firstly, some people anyway, queued for about 3.5 hours. And also, they were saying as well that essentially it's a piece of history, isn't it? Which it is. So, how long are you willing to wait for a piece of history? But what else are you doing? What else did you make of the ceremony that took place earlier on? GB Views at gbnews.uk. We will get the latest reaction and analysis in a moment after the headlines from the wonderful Simon Pusey.
Thanks, Patrick. I'm Simon Pusey in the GB newsroom. Queen Elizabeth's coffin is now at Westminster Hall, where she is lying in state for 4 days. The late monarch was carried on a gun carriage from Buckingham Palace in a military procession through central London. King Charles walked behind Her Majesty's coffin in line with his brothers, the Duke of York and the Earl of Wessex, and his sister, the Princess Royal. His sons, Princes William and Harry, followed on foot behind. Thousands of people lined the route, with viewing areas filled hours before the procession began. The lying in state is now open to the public. As we've been hearing, Westminster Hall will be open 24 hours a day until the morning of the state funeral next Monday. Hundreds of thousands of people are expected to file past Her Majesty's coffin to pay their respects. Despite long waits, up to 30 hours expected for some, people in the queue have said it's worth the wait for a chance to say goodbye to Her Majesty.
So sad, so terribly sad. God bless our Queen.
We was here yesterday at 7 o'clock and it's worth it. It is. She's one good, amazing lady.
I think solemn is the word. You know, it is really respectful. It's very much, people are so pleased to just pay their respects.
I'll be honest with you, a little bit shell-shocked. I think they're probably shell-shocked, but it's a lot to take in. But one feels history passing.
Well, the Department for Culture, Media and Sport has published a queue tracker, which currently shows the line is 2.6 miles long. The capacity is 10 miles. For those wanting to join, the nearest landmark at the end of the queue is currently London Bridge. Well, King Charles III has returned to Gloucestershire for a day off from public duties. The King has gone back to his Highgrove home for a private day of reflection following a historic few days which has seen him proclaimed monarch. His Majesty is not expected to attend any public events tomorrow, but it's understood he'll be preparing for his new role. The private day has been set aside as part of the funeral plan for the late Queen, known as Operation London Bridge. In other news, as Ukraine's counter-offensive gains territory, families are finally being reunited after months apart. In the eastern Kharkiv region, the mother of a mayor jumped for joy when she saw her son, saying she knew he'd return home. The reunion happened in a village that's been recaptured by Ukraine near the Russian border. And the World Health Organization says the end of the COVID-19 pandemic is in sight. The WHO says the number of weekly reported deaths is the lowest since March 2020. According to the organization, the world has never been in a better position to end the pandemic, but they say people shouldn't let their guard down just yet. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Patrick.
Good evening, everybody. Patrick Christie's here. Interesting to hear in the bulletins, wasn't it, that the WHO have finally declared that the end of the COVID pandemic is in sight. I think they might find, actually, that it ended a long time ago, but apparently today's not the day to talk about that. Good evening. We could not have predicted a magnitude of the Queen's passing in anything like what we've just seen, and just how poignant the days leading up to her state funeral would be. Compassion, emotion, unity and sheer respect for Her late Majesty has been at the forefront of events over the past couple of days. Now, though, it's time for the public to say one final farewell to a woman who led their nation on a global stage for 70 years with grace, dedication and no complaints. Theo Giacomba has this report for us.
As many continue to mourn the death of Queen Elizabeth II, thousands have travelled from all corners of the UK and from around the world to pay their respects to the Queen.
Really just wanted to show our respects and gratitude to Her Majesty and to obviously send our condolences to the royal family.
We'll be laying our flowers at Green Park and then try to work our way down the Mall and see if we can find the best place to see the procession.
I live in Gloucestershire with my family, so I've come to put some flowers down for everybody to represent the family and say thank you to the Queen.
Among those are these people who've been queuing for several days to get into the Palace of Westminster to see her coffin.
Queen has been the head of the Commonwealth for a long time, 70 years, which I'm part of the Commonwealth. So I came here to represent Commonwealth and then also to pay my respect for her passing and say thank you for all what you have done for Commonwealth, Britain and the whole world.
We're not here because we're mad, we're here because we're proud. You know, and if you look down that queue of people, we're all here for the same reason, to pay our respects to our sovereign that led us for, 70 years, which is an incredible reign.
I need to be at the front so I can ensure that I've got a position so I can go and say bye to my Queen, pay my last respect to her. Also, because of health issues, I can't stand up very long, so if I can come early and have a seat, when the crowds start getting larger, if I was coming that time, I'd spend more time standing up.
At 2:22 p.m, Her Majesty began her final journey from Buckingham Palace, a procession led by the Queen's 4 children, King Charles, Prince Andrew, Prince Edward and Princess Anne, followed by the King's sons, Prince William and Prince Harry. After a walk of around 45 minutes, this was the moment her coffin arrived in Westminster. It was carried by a gun carriage of the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery, a mounted unit which is used to mark grand state events. Which was followed by this prayer by the Archbishop of Canterbury.
O God, the Maker and Redeemer of all mankind, grant us, with thy servant Queen Elizabeth and all the faithful departed, the sure benefits of thy Son's saving passion and glorious resurrection, that in the last day, when all things are gathered up in Christ, we may with them enjoy the fullness of thy promises.
Those who've managed to get into the queue in central London will get the opportunity to pay their respects to the Queen in Westminster Hall, which will be guarded 24 hours a day by soldiers. As the state funeral approaches on Monday, tens of thousands are expected to make their way into the city to witness this historic moment honouring Her Majesty the Queen. Theo Giacomba, GB News.
Really fitting that everyone's paying their respects, but our Home Affairs and Security Editor is at Buckingham Palace right now. Mark, a day that has undoubtedly touched the heart of our nation.
Yes, it has, Patrick. It was incredibly emotional to watch that very sombre procession up the Mall, into Horse Guards, down Whitehall and then into Westminster itself. It's something, of course, that this country does so very well, and along with the sadness of that event was just the magnificence of the military parade. There was the spectacle of senior members and others, members of the royal family, walking behind that gun carriage as it made its way up down towards Westminster Hall itself. And now, of course, that the coffin is in place within Westminster Hall, we really are at the stage where members of the public will be given the opportunity to pay their respects to the late monarch. And we now know that the queue is about 2.6 miles long. It's stretching back to Borough Market, but it is moving quite quickly. Having said that, it is going to take quite a bit of stamina still to stand in the queue for quite a number of hours. But it seems that many thousands want to do that, and understandably so. In terms of the monarch, well, King Charles and his Queen Consort Camilla left Buckingham Palace a couple of hours ago now, Patrick, by helicopter. They landed in Wiltshire. We understand that the Queen has gone temporarily to her residence in Wiltshire. The King has driven himself to his residence in Gloucestershire, Highgrove House. He is going to have a well-deserved, I think, day off tomorrow, a day of reflection it's being billed as, because it has been, ever since the death of the monarch was announced on Thursday, it has been just non-stop for the new king, as he's had to deal with, of course, his own private grief, but all of the ceremonial and official duties that he now has to perform as the new monarch.
Absolutely. Mark, sorry to kind of throw this one out. You said a little bit left field. There is a relevance to it, though. I'm just reading that the Met chief could make every officer swear a new oath to the king. I'm just wondering whether or not how well you think that might be received.
I'm sure that would be absolutely fine, although I was speaking to the chief of the General Staff, as he was, Lord Dannatt, former head of the Army, yesterday for a piece that we're putting together for the weekend, looking ahead to the military's involvement in the funeral. And he said that actually the oath that they swear is not just to the current monarch, but it is effectively to any monarchs that past that become the new monarch in that sense. So it's kind of taken care of in that sense, but it may well be that they do decide to actually swear a new oath to the king as well.
Mark, thank you very, very much. Mark White there, our Home and Security Editor, just outside Buckingham Palace. Right, well, with me now to debrief the day's events and kind of drill down, actually, to some of the more specific areas of it is the wonderful and the renowned journalist and royal broadcaster, Carol Malone. Carol, how are you?
I'm fine, honey, I'm fine. Losing my voice. I've been talking so much, but anyway, I've got a bit left.
Oh, there you go. Just sounds like you're looking forward to it, Carol. Okay, no, no, okay. Definitely on a more serious note. Firstly, your views on the day's proceedings and events. I must admit, I will freely admit now, absolutely sick of the word sombre, but begrudgingly, it is probably the best word to describe the events.
Oh, I think there are much better words to describe today than that. I thought it was majestic. I thought it was emotional. I thought it was dignified, uplifting. It was inspiring. I was looking at it and thinking, countries from around the world, people from around the world looking at that would have been inspired. No other country in the world could have done what we did today. It just wouldn't happen. I know this has been planned for years. It's been well rehearsed and planned, but it went off without a hitch. I was, and watching all of those soldiers, from all regiments, those sad, proud soldiers doing their duty, brought me to tears so many times. It was just, I think, I was looking at it, this is how our little island says goodbye to a monarch that we adored. And although, you know, she's now, you know, she's lying in state, I think there's a comfort. I think the reason all of those people are queuing, they want to pay their respects. One of your gentlemen there just said, you know, we're not mad, we're proud. And that is true. But also there's a comfort, because there's a comfort in knowing she's still with us, you know. She's still there. And we're edging ever closer to the day when we're going to have to say goodbye finally. But the fact that all of those people are queuing is amazing. I thought the procession was so moving. You know, it was everyone in that procession had a connection to the Queen. There was members of her staff there was her equerries, obviously the family, goes without saying, but people who were close to her in life all had a part in that procession. So it was a very, very personal thing. And it was interesting to look at the streets of London, you know. Apart from the haunting music of the procession, the streets were silent. People were either applauding or they were crying. And it was, you know, when I first heard the applause, I wasn't sure what I felt about it. But then I thought, my God, people need to say thank you. They need to show their gratitude. And that's what they were doing. And I thought the whole day, you know, it was uplifting in its way. It was also gut-wrenching in terms of the sadness that we're saying goodbye to her. But I think she would have loved today. I think she would have been very happy with the way it went.
Agree completely, and it's a really interesting juxtaposition between people. We're going up north shortly to Anna Riley, our reporter up there, who's in a pub in Wakefield, I believe, for work. But Anna's going to be talking to the landlady there, and the landlady's, I heard her briefly earlier, very, very upset and quite despondent. And then you hear a couple of people that Tom Harwell was interviewing on Lambeth Bridge, just about to go and pay their final respects to the Queen. And they've queued for hours, some of these people. They're actually quite upbeat, actually. They're very upbeat because they're about to go and pay their final respects. You would imagine that emotion would obviously shift and it would become a lot more solemn. But can I get your views on a couple of the little things like protests, for example? I mean, in a way, I'm quite glad that some people have protested, because now we can identify who the people I hate are in society.
Is this for me? Yes, I thought. Yeah, I mean, you know, anyone who protests today is an idiot. It really is as simple as that. And I hope they're lifted and taken away by the cops. You know, I don't know whether they're Republicans. I don't know what they are, but you know, they're just stupid people. This is a day that 99.9% of the country, you know, want to pay their respects, want to say thank you, and there's a handful of idiots. They are not representative of the people of this country. They are not representative of what the rest of us feel. So let's just hope the cops got rid of them quickly. It's just stupid, you know. It's very selfish and it's very self-centered, because no one wants to hear what they have to say. I don't care if people have a right to protest. They don't have a right to protest today when the Queen is being taken to Westminster Hall. They just don't.
I'm very sorry, but anyone, regardless, pretty much regardless of who it is, if you are shouting at a funeral, then I'm sorry, or a service, or, you know, shouting near a coffin, anyway, for goodness sake, then you are not the nicest of individuals. Can you imagine going down the pub to your mates after that, Carol, and go, what did you do today? Oh, you'll never guess what I did. I went and shouted mean things at the family of people walking just yards behind their mother's coffin. You're like, right, I'm not sure I want to be your friend anymore. Just before I let you get going, Carol, slightly off-piece, but not quite, I've had this news break to me whilst I'm on air. And it's been a solemn occasion today, and it's been very, very, you know, emotional, a roller coaster of emotion. Great to see the pageantry, great to see the amount of people, you know, queuing up to pay their respects to the Queen. Deeply sad, of course, watching the royal family walk behind the coffin. On another note, I've just found out that Greggs McDonald's, Amazon, but not Centre Parks, are going to be closing on Monday during the funeral. This is amongst various other things that are shutting down, including apparently things like GP appointments and doctor's surgeries. Forgive me, Carol, I don't know how you think. I want as many people in the country watching the Queen's funeral as possible, but I'm going to take some convincing that she would have wanted Greggs McDonald's, Amazon, and to a much more significant extent GP surgeries to close for her funeral.
You know, you have to remember the lady that we're mourning here. This is a woman who was one of the most hard-working women we've ever come across. You know, she would not want the country to come to a close. She certainly would not want hospitals to cancel appointments. She wouldn't want matters of government to be cancelled. But there's a part of me that gets why people in Greggs and why in shops and supermarkets want to see it. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to take some time off and I'm going to watch it. So they must feel entitled to do the same. I don't believe that essential services should be stopped. I mean, some people wait months and months to get an appointment with the NHS, and to have it cancelled on Monday is crazy. Centre Parks were nuts. I think they've rowed back now, actually, Centre Parks. I think because they were going to order people who were already on holiday there to leave, which is a nonsense, but I think they've rowed back on that. I don't think that's happening now. But I get why the people...
Don't want to end up getting sued by Centre Parks. They'll put me in a forest with the others or something. But yes, Carol, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show, Carol. As always, Carol Malone, journalist and royal broadcaster. Well, the late Queen is now performing her final public duty as she lies in state at Westminster Hall. Hundreds of thousands of people have joined the queues, which stretch for more than 3 miles now down the banks of the River Thames. In fact, we can see a little map of the queues, a queue update there. Nigel Farage earlier on, I'm inclined to take his word for it, said this is one of the best organised events that he's ever come across. And, of course, in whatever the weather, people are actually seriously queuing up. Our correspondent, Tom Harwood, has been speaking to some of them and sent us this report.
Well, here we are in the midst of the queue whereby members of the public can wait to file past, with a certain sense of solemn dignity, file past the coffin of Her late Majesty, the Queen. This queue has at points stretched beyond 3 miles long, just under that as we speak, but we'll be going 24 hours throughout the day, and the next day, and the next, and the next. 4 days of lying in state until we get through to Monday morning as Westminster Hall closes and preparations for the funeral of Her late Majesty begins. It's interesting to see this queue at this particular point in the shadow of what's now known as Elizabeth Tower, the clock tower that holds Big Ben, looking down on people as they walk through. And the mood here has been so very interesting, not just solemn, but also at points friendship and community, and at various areas a bit of jollity too. There's such a sense of mixed emotion in this queue as people have a common sense of purpose, heading together with all these other people, with this sense of togetherness that we haven't felt as a country, I feel, for quite a long time. I wonder if we can speak to any of the people in the queue now. Excuse me, sir, how long have you waited?
Since about 4:05.
Okay,
and that was queuing as far back as just beyond the globe.
So nowhere near the 30 hours that
nowhere
people feared.
Near, and especially it's been stop-start for a while, and then we got to South Bank, and it's just shot straight through. This just feels empty. It's great.
Yes, quite quick moving. How are you expecting to feel when you reach the chamber?
Don't know. That's the thing. I don't know how I feel about it. It's a lot of there's kind of pent-up emotion of what's been going on, and also probably some family history as well of bereavements not really dealt with, so kind of some of that as well, so projection onto there. So.
At what point did you know you had to come?
As soon as it happened. Mainly here for my son. I knew the sort of thing he'd want to do, and it's one of those, thankfully it is a once in a lifetime experience, so you're not going to have to do it very often, hopefully. So at that point you think, yeah, we've got to do it. So.
Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you.
All the best. Well, there we go. Let's see if we can speak to anyone else. Excuse me, sir, how long have you waited today?
Only 2 hours, so not long at all.
Oh, really? That's remarkable. Well, thank you for taking the time. Excuse me, how long have you been waiting?
I've been waiting for a long time because I had to go out with my bag to, and go to the bathroom. But I've been here since 11 o'clock.
And have you felt that this is something that you really have had to do?
Oh, definitely. And the more importantly, because I came when Lady Diana was here, and both my children when they were much younger. And William is same age as my daughter. Having the 40th birthday means a lot to me. And I was so pleased with William and Harry being together. I'm so proud. I know the Queen would be. And let's hope they'll stay close.
Do you feel that there's a certain sense of personal connection you have with this royal family? It's a sort of sense of togetherness.
Definitely. I think my father was very very proud of. He used to call my mum Queen Elizabeth. That's how important it meant in our family. So for me to be here, it means the world, because my grandson is 7 and he wanted to come with me. And because he goes to school, his mum, Premlata, my daughter, she's going to take them to Windsor Castle just to get the experience of it. That's my grandchildren. And my granddaughter said she would love to, and she's not even 5 yet. And it means a lot to both of the children. So I think with Queen and with what happens through Diana and whatever, it's so lovely to see William and Harry. I was very proud. So it means a lot to me. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, and all the best in there as well.
Thank you.
Well, there we go, just a flavour of some of the raw emotion here in the queue as well. We mustn't forget that whilst there is all of that sense of togetherness, of people coming together, there's also the very real tragedy at the heart of all of this, that our longest reigning monarch, a monarch who served this country for 7 decades, is no longer with us. And the opportunity to say goodbye is something that these people are not taking lightly.
Yes, absolutely very moving and powerful to hear those views there of just the general public after they've queued for hours, and thank you, Tom Harwood, for accosting strangers on Lambeth Bridge. Many of you at home have been getting in touch, though. Mark says King Charles has got a big, difficult job keeping the Union and Commonwealth together and obviously burying your mother. I suspect this might be in relation to some of the comments that were coming in, mostly from plebs, really, on social media, saying that King Charles now has, lost his cool, lost his rag. He's done it a couple of times. King Charles has got a rather difficult relationship with what appears to be a leaky ink pen, OK? It's been an issue for him a couple of times, and he's had important documents in front of him, historical documents in front of him that he's been trying to sign. He's obviously just lost his mother. He's been here, there and everywhere, pulled over the UK like a yo-yo, and then, the nightmare scenario happens, his pen leaks, right? And so he got a little bit, frustrated, really. I actually thought it was a very candid moment that was caught on camera. Some people who appear to never have had a bad day in their lives decided to take to social media to say that they actually thought that this showed he was, temperamental and he couldn't handle a crisis. I mean, for a start, this is a pretty big crisis. And also, I found it quite human, to be honest with you. I think a lot of people don't realise what they want, do they? They want someone human, but then they don't really. So there we go. But loads of you are getting in touch, OK. There's a lot of people getting in touch as well, just to say, look, basically, God save the King, and they do hope that everything, I suppose, works out, really. And it was very, very moving to see King Charles and the royal family walking behind the coffin. Well, with us very, very shortly, I believe, in fact, potentially now, to look at how this is being covered across the Commonwealth is the editor of Spectator Australia Online and ambassador for Australia's constitutional monarchy, easy for me to say, Alexandra Marshall. Thank you very much, Alexandra. I believe the last time I spoke to you, it was it would have been the morning for you. I think it was overnight here, the day of the Queen's death. And, I mean, it's hard to think it's been that long ago. I mean, we've kind of barely spoken about anything else. But what's the sense at the minute like where you are in Australia?
Well, myself, like so many others down here in Australia, I've had to stop watching the footage of all these people processing past the Queen because I keep bursting into tears and then I look like a raccoon. So I've had to stop. I nearly went off again with that footage you showed beforehand. A lot of Australia is obviously watching all the events unfold in the UK. A lot of broadcasters, particularly American broadcasters, have forgotten that she was our Queen as much as she was anybody else's, and that was the beauty of Her Majesty. She treated all the realms and all the citizens of the Commonwealth exactly the same. She was a great unifying force, and we all feel her loss quite keenly. And if anything, as the days have gone by since her death was announced, the shock has worn off, and the terrible loss that's there in this gap of leadership in the world is being felt more keenly by people, particularly when her coffin was travelling through Scotland, now throwing flowers on the road. That is when it really started to hit home to a lot of people watching at home.
Absolutely, and you mentioned a really important phrase there, which is that she was a world leader, a figurehead of the world. That's why every other country, and anyone who tells you differently is lying, every single other country in the world wished that they had our Queen, because she was the world's monarch, essentially. Some would even go as far as to say, in a sense, maybe the world's grandmother. And she leaves behind a massive void. Alexandra, I am, and I don't want to over-dramatise this too much, but we do live in scary times. I am quite scared of the potentially destabilising effect that the Queen's death may have globally.
Well, there are a couple of things there. The first is that monarchy seems to be an institution that is so deeply rooted in human history, not just English history, but human history in general, that without a sovereign who is more or less without power, but is there as a spiritual leader for the world, really, and for the people, we see republics and the presidents at the heads of republics being almost deified in a dangerous way. I mean, you look at America and their families of presidents are turning into essentially old school monarchies where they've got power and prestige, whereas the Queen stood for the absolute best solution of power in a symbolic sense, but only to hand it back to the people. It's such an important midway point. And without her in the world, you're right, there is definitely a void of power sitting above the world's presidents and prime ministers, who are all looking up to her guidance. I mean, she solved a lot of political crises just by talking to these people. And without her gone, with her gone, the wealth of knowledge that she had and the, almost century worth of political knowledge has been lost. And I think we will feel that across the world's leaders for a while as they try and find their feet.
Yeah, and talking of, well, different leaders, by definition, I suppose, King Charles is different to his mother. That's a fact. He's a different personality. I just think as well that he's had so long not being king that we have got to know him a lot better and a lot more extensively than we perhaps knew the Queen before she came into that role in her 20s, and therefore he's had more time to comment on things. He's had more time to, yes, make mistakes as well, and there were massive elements of his past. We can't ignore this. There were elements of his past where he's made, I would argue, catastrophic mistakes. There were times I've been disappointed that he's got involved in things like this big net zero environmentalist agenda. I was maybe slightly more sceptical than I am now anyway about some of his previous links, etc. Not necessarily always covered himself in glory. But he is our king now, and I think we have to accept that, or at least give him the opportunity, Alexandra, to prove himself to be a monarch, even if that means he's got a slightly different style.
Well, let's be fair. I think Charles was a little bit naive. He wanted to be an eco-warrior, and from a purely PR perspective, that wasn't such a bad plan, but it probably would have been better if he'd trekked off into the Amazon with a Netflix film crew. That would have been safer than cuddling up to the World Economic Forum and launching things like the Great Reset. But I dare say he may have learned his lesson. He seems to have taken seriously the advice of his mother, which is to become completely non-political as an entity. And it seems as though he has severed those former dalliances of his extremely long time he's waited to be king. And what's happened that surprised a lot of commentators across the Commonwealth is that Charles is a different man as king. And the public have sensed it. So the initial grief that Prince Charles saw coming from the public has extended into respect. And that respect is the first and fundamental building block on which he will be able to build his reign. And he, of course, cannot try and compete with his mother. She's the longest-serving monarch in British history. But what he can do is be the best possible monarch for the time that he has left.
100%, and I absolutely do not mean to be disrespectful towards King Charles. In fact, I've gone into bat for him numerous times today, and not that he needed my support, of course, and on social media as well, and the kind of unrelenting face of some idiots who got a bit shirty with him because he, wasn't happy about getting ink all over his hands on one of the saddest days of his life. However, you did mention something there that I would just like to ask you a little bit more about, which was that Charles's links to some of the larger, or potential links, should we say, some of the larger financial elements of the world. You alluded to that. What are they? I've heard some people mention this on Twitter and on social media and allude to it slightly in the news, but I want your views on it because I'm not massively across that then. So Charles's links to things like the World Economic Forum.
Well, the thing is, it's that World Economic Forum and United Nations strange marriage that's going on has sucked most of the world's political leaders in. It's like a giant honeypot. So Charles is by no means alone in getting involved in this organisation. I mean, I just wrote a piece about the Pope and the speeches that the Catholic Church has done trying to ingratiate themselves in this organisation, this movement. So it's something that is basically infecting the prime ministers, presidents, and heads of states, and also the spiritual leaders of the world, because they feel that there's so much money and power behind this. It's basically a closed-door lobbying event where an unelected combination of celebrities, bureaucrats, and political leaders and CEOs are doing business deals, really, and they're being replicated in policy. And somehow Charles managed to get himself involved in the eco side of it, mostly through the United Nations. So while he's there talking to plants and trying to save the ecosystem in the world, he's ended up wrapped in a much larger movement, which conservatives, who should be the natural defenders of the crown, don't like. So it was a catastrophic miscalculation on Prince Charles's, now King Charles III's, account to involve himself in a left-wing, mostly Marxist organisation, because obviously those kind of organisations have no love for the monarchy. So should he forget that, and should he sever ties now that he is king, it will be okay, as long as he doesn't return to bad habits.
I just hope he doesn't get really bad advice, because you alluded to something there about a level of infection. Now, I don't think it's just necessarily things like the World Economic Forum. I think there's just general things as well in society where people think, oh, we've got to come out and say this. People don't necessarily realise what they're doing. So they go, right, OK, let's commit our company now to some bizarre net zero agenda. Let's just slap a rainbow flag on the front of whatever product it is. I mean, the mental health charity Mind, for example, came out yesterday. Something that, bear in mind, I've been raising money for Mind for quite a while. I was quite surprised at this, and certainly, well, we'll talk about it at the time, but which appeared to raise questions about our police force in this country, it could be said anyway, taking, one would argue, potentially an overtly political stance on something. And I think it's because there's actually a fundamental lack of thought. These people think, oh, we can't miss with this, we can't go wrong with this. And I'm concerned that actually you can go wrong with it. And I wouldn't want now King Charles to align himself politically with something that might end up coming back to bite him if indeed he gets it wrong. I hope that he gets good advice, frankly, and actually takes that advice, Alexandra.
Well, he's going to have a lot of difficulty. His mother, the Queen, she oversaw the greatest leap in technology that the world has ever seen. So the world that she was born into looked nothing like the world that she left behind. But Prince Charles now, King Charles, has got one of the most dangerous technological revolutions that he will have to navigate, and that is the rise of digital authoritarianism that we're seeing in so many countries coming into policy now, that has begun in some of these international bureaucracies and has now become legislation. That is a significant challenge for the liberty of people, and as the caretaker of the Constitution and really the protector of the citizens of the Commonwealth, it may fall to him to make sure that citizens remain free from this new technological age. And I'm not sure how much advice or how equipped he is to handle something like that, but we will see. There's a lot of challenges coming up, and this century is going to be a real doozy for everyone. So yes, I hope Charles, as you say, is getting good advice.
Just very finally, Alessandra, thank you for your time this evening or morning. My inability to get my head around different time codes is unbelievable, but there we go. I hope he doesn't get cancelled. Now, just hear me out on this. Every single Tom, Dick and Harry seems to be at risk of being cancelled these days for something well, sometimes relatively minor, definitely historic. King Charles has been at the thick end of international relations and everything else for, well, decades, for as long as he's been alive, by definition. And the Queen, well, in my opinion, never really put a foot wrong at all. So one would imagine it's quite difficult to cancel the Queen. But I am just concerned that in this day and age and the way that things are going at the minute, I really, really hope this doesn't happen. But, there's some risk that something comes up or whatever. And this chap that we're seeing now, who I would happily pledge allegiance to in a heartbeat, and I hope is a fantastic monarch of, no offence, Alexandra, for you in Australia there, but for my money, the best country in the world here in Great Britain. I just hope that he isn't cancelled by some kind of woke mob or something.
Well, the King Charles is like a tent, and he's pegged out by several strong anchor points. One of them is the memory of his mother, and the Republican movements that we saw in the past, you can see how doomed they were to fail by how much respect Her Majesty commands even in death. So we have the memory of his mother. On the other side, we have the future of the monarchy, which are his children, particularly William and Kate and their children. They are popular, and they will help to stabilise his monarchy. And the other is, of course, the institution itself, and what the Republicans have not expected and what has made them rethink a little bit their position is our attachment to monarchy itself and heritage and history, particularly Australians. It's probably different for you, but we're a relatively young country. I mean, you're not going to find buildings older than 200 years. So when we look back, our history traces back to the UK, and so our history is your history, it's shared, and we don't want to feel as if we're going to lose that. And we've lost so much in our modern culture. Watching the behaviour that we're seeing now with the death of the Queen, it's so clear that we've lost our manners, we've lost our deference, we've lost our respect in our normal lives. And seeing it in contrast now, a lot of people are thinking, maybe the monarchy is keeping some of the better qualities of our civilization alive, and that will help Charles. So provided he doesn't make any genuinely huge missteps, I don't believe his past will cancel him. It will only be the conduct of his future.
Thank you very, very much, Alexandra Marshall there, who is editor of The Spectator Australia Online and ambassador for Australian constitutional monarchy. Well, let's return now to more of the events that happened today. We had a look towards the future there. Let's ground ourselves again in what happened today. And let's return to our Home and Security editor, Mark White, at Buckingham Palace. Mark, thank you very much. What's going on where you are? Just describe the day, and also actually just talk us through a little bit, actually, about what we've got coming up, tomorrow and the day after that.
Well, tomorrow we have what's been billed as a day of reflection for the King and Queen Camilla, effectively a day of rest for them, because there's no doubt that they need that, because ever since the Queen's death on Thursday of last week, it has been non-stop. It's exhausting for anyone who has to live with a bereavement, both physically and emotionally, and on top of that, of course, to become king, to have to then fly down to London to deal with all the ceremonial and all the official tasks, and then fly back up to Scotland, deal with the ceremonial and official tasks up there. It is understandably very, very draining. So tomorrow it'll be a day of reflection for the King and the Queen, and then we're expecting on Friday that King Charles will travel to Wales to address the Welsh Parliament. Later in the day he'll be returning to London, because we're expecting that there will be that solemn ceremony, the Vigil of the Princes, a repeat of what happened at St Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh, where the King and the other children of the monarch stood vigil over the coffin containing her Queen Elizabeth II. So a similar situation we're expecting on Friday, and really a lot of the focus, Patrick, is going to be on, in the meantime, the viewing of the late monarch as she lies in state inside Westminster Hall. The queue some hope, I think. Was 2.6 miles long. We're told that it's reduced in size now to 2.4 miles long, stretching back to round about the Borough Market area. But it is moving quite quickly. Having said that, you do need a bit of stamina because there will be quite a few hours of queuing and walking before they're eventually allowed to pay respects to the late monarch inside Westminster Hall.
Mark White, thank you very much, as ever, putting in yet another marathon stint for us outside Buckingham Palace there, our Home and Security editor. Well, shortly we are going to be going to a pub in Wakefield, I believe. Yes, that's right, for work purposes and work purposes only, where we'll be speaking to people who've been paying their respects in their own way to our dear Queen. But the reigning monarch is also responsible for overseeing the Duchy of Lancaster, the estate that provides an independent source of income to the sovereign, which potentially will shut a lot of people up who think that essentially the royal family's on the take. But there we go. And with that role comes the title of Duke of Lancaster. This is a title that the Queen held for many decades, and our North West of England reporter, Sophie Reaper, has been finding out how she fared in the role.
A 70-year-long reign as Queen, but in Lancashire, Elizabeth II was always known by another name, the Duke of Lancaster.
The waiting crowds outside typified the warmth that marked Lancashire's loyal welcome.
A ceremonial title given to the monarch, this historical position saw the Queen take a great interest in the county.
The Queen, the late Queen, was our landlord, and she really does care about those tenanted farms. And I think, you know, that she's regularly visited Lancashire to visit those tenant farmers.
The land on which Myerscough College is built has been part of the Duchy of Lancaster estate since the mid-13th century. So, as the Duke of Lancaster, the Queen made it her business to visit on multiple occasions.
She opened this campus in 1969. She opened our library in 1999, and she visited our farm, Lodge Farm, in 2015. She was an incredible woman, did an incredible job for the country, and it was a real honour to have met her.
When Myerscough completed its library in 1999, the Queen was there to open it.
It was a great honour that she accepted an invitation, herself and the Duke of Edinburgh, to actually come up and formally open it for us. What was interesting actually was it was quite choreographed, or it's supposed to be choreographed, but the Duke of Edinburgh decided to break ranks, and he went off talking to everybody. He was very interested in going around, and the Queen indeed as well. She circulated around and spoke to various people.
It's always been a proud tradition for the monarch to visit Lancashire as part of the Duke of Lancaster role.
The King, the Queen and Princess Margaret began their tour of the Duchy estates, and the warm welcome of their tenants was mirrored for all to see.
A tradition that the Queen carried on from her father, King George VI. As the Duke of Lancaster, the Queen's main responsibility was overseeing the Duchy of Lancaster. That meant taking an active role in the estate, visiting its many tenants, and every now and again performing ceremonial duties, such as accepting the keys to Lancaster Castle. However, the title also saw her fulfil some duties that were a little more niche. For instance, it's traditionally the role of the Duke of Lancaster to appoint the guides to the sands of Morecambe Bay.
It all came about in 1536 when Henry VIII appointed the guides of the bay, and it was positioned because obviously the road transport was no good then. So the goods were being shipped into Lancaster, which is over there, and then they were bringing them across the bay by horse and carriage, and obviously there was fatalities. So Henry VIII appointed the guides to guide the carts and goods across the bay. Sadly the Queen has passed away, but now her son stepped in to take the role, and eventually his son will take, we'll have King William, won't we?
The Queen served for 70 years as the Duke of Lancaster and will always be remembered here in the county for her service to the Duchy and to its people. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
Yes, well, there we go. Now, the day's events have been watched right across the UK. Millions of people tuning in to the poignant service at Westminster Hall. Some of them saw it from the Black Horse pub in Wakefield in Yorkshire. One of them, I believe, is Jessie Logan. Yes, there we go. Thank you very much, Jessie. Right, now, Jessie, I'm from Well, just down the motorway from you, the kind of, you won't like me for this, but the red bit, OK, just near the red bit anyway, Lancashire. Yorkshire, the old staple joke is that, you know, Yorkshire's God's own country, right? You know, it's its own thing, right? But actually today you're very much British, are you? I suppose you put aside your county-wide love affair, I suppose, to pay tribute to our dear Queen. How did you feel? Did you feel a weird sense of, you know, I suppose, pride, but also sorrow?
Yeah, I think a lot of people in Wakefield feel the same way that I do. We have a lot of pride and we have a lot of respect for our Queen. It kind of felt like losing a grandma because she is that close. I mean, she devoted her life to the people. So, yeah, it was really close to my heart.
There are quite a few people there, and I think maybe let's look ahead a little bit as well and discuss. I don't know if there are any plans for what's going to happen on Monday for the funeral at all. I mean, presumably people might gather there because with the Queen's passing, I think the nation feels like it's lost something, like you said, a grandmother. But pubs like where you are now provide that sense of community, don't they? Do you think people will come together?
Yeah, I think that it would make sense for people to come together. I'm not quite sure on our plans at the moment. I know that a couple of places in Wakefield are planning on potentially opening just for the people that live on their own and that are lonely. We want to be able to create that family spirit, and that's something that we aim to do at the Black Horse.
Really was the Queen for everybody, wasn't she? And I mean, I know I was kind of just engaging in a little bit of gentle ribbing there about Yorkshire. That's my own personal bias coming through. But I must say, I'm very proud to be from the north because I don't want anyone down south to have a go at me now. But I think sometimes there's a bit more patriotism up north, to be perfectly honest. And I can see you've got a bit of bunting behind you there. You love to see it. I mean, do you think realistically that you know the north of our particular country is, you know, absolutely devastated at the minute, but potentially it could bring us all together?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that statement. I think that the North always rallies together. You always have a smile, especially in Lancashire and in Liverpool. You always know that you're welcome. Like around the pub scene and everything, everyone really looks after each other. I think that it is a devastating time for us all, but I know that we can get through this together and welcoming our new king.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, how did you feel as well? Can I just ask you a little bit about how you felt about the old Prince Harry situation? What's the mood like where you are there? I mean, do you wish that the brothers would put it to one side? I'm not trying to trip you up. I know it's a bit of a touchy subject, but I just want to get the views of normal people. I'm sick of interviewing royal experts all the time who give me the same answer. I want to know what people like you think about it.
I mean, with Prince Harry and Prince William, I think that they really should just put things aside. There's been a lot of hurt and a lot of pain, and I think that if they could come together just like people like me and people in the north, it would definitely stop the animosity and that kind of thing. I think there has to be a bit of respect there for each other, and I'm sure that they do love each other dearly, so it is quite sad to see how broken up the family is.
It really is. King Charles, do you think he'd be a good king? It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I don't know, I won't ask your age on national television, but I can tell very easily that obviously throughout your own life, and as indeed it has been for mine and most people in the country, the only person we've known in a monarchy sense has been the Queen, right? So it's a bit of a difference for us. King Charles is a different person. Has he got your full support, do you think?
I mean, yeah, for me, he definitely has my full support. I think that he's going to be a great king. It is a shame that we're probably never going to have another queen in our lifetime. However, we've had kings before, and I think that he'll keep on his mother's legacy. Obviously, he's his own man and he'll do his own thing, but I think that he'll definitely honour the Queen's spirit wherever he goes.
Right, Jessie, just the last question now for you. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. You're an absolute natural, by the way. I think it's probably only a matter of time before you have your own show on GBNews. But one thing I miss about being up north, well, in fact, to be perfectly honest with you, I'm not drinking at all these days, but one thing I do miss about being up north is the good local ale, right? It's got a cracking mix of ale. What have we got on tap at the Black Horse pub, do you know?
Yes, I do. So we have Black Sheep, we have Timothy Taylor's Landlord, we have York's Blonde, and we've also got a new one which is 5 hops. It's kind of like a fruity ale. That one would be my pick if you were coming over.
OK, good stuff. Well, thank you very much. Yes, Black Sheep used to be mine, but it was a different time. Thank you very much, Jessie. Great to have you on. Jessie Logan there, the Black Horse pub in Wakefield. I like that. Okay, you know, look, please forgive me, everybody. I love royal correspondence, especially the fantastic ones that we do have here on GB News. But, you know, it's nice to speak to normal people every now and again, isn't it? Let's get some more of your comments from you at home. Bob's been on. Bob says, I'd love to be able to go and show my respects to her. This is presumably Her Majesty. Yes, it is. After what she gave us for 70 years of her life. Work, unfortunately, gets in the way. However, I'll be tuning into your coverage over the next week. Good stuff, Bob. Potentially quite buoyed to know that the queues... well, they do seem almost as long as we were expecting, but they seem to be moving quicker. Little gripe of mine, which I did not appreciate the way that it seemed to me like some of the authorities were trying to put people off from coming. I can understand that there's an issue and a concern about the sheer volumes of people. Will our public services be able to handle them? All of that stuff. I do get that. But if it does emerge that actually they were essentially lying about how long it's going to take to go and pay your final respects to the Queen. And people like you, Bob, or there's loads of people that I see in the inbox here every single day saying, well, I just haven't got the time, or I can't come for this, that and the other reason, or the elderly and the disabled who might be put off thinking that they're going to have to stand there for 30 hours and actually they'll be through in 3 or 4 hours. I think that's pretty disgraceful, to be honest, if indeed that's happened. Lucinda recalls... This sounds quite prophetic. Lucinda recalls a promise she once made. It says... I first took an oath to the Queen as a young brownie guide and feel so sad at her passing. God bless King Charles, his siblings and his family circle. That is actually really lovely, Lucinda. Never forgotten the oath that you've made. It emerges, apparently, that the new Met Police Chief is going to be, well, potentially anyway, making members of the force pledge allegiance to the King. Some discrepancy there as to whether or not they've already pledged allegiance to the whole royal family or otherwise, but either way, I think it might be nice. And I would have serious concerns, by the way, if a member of our Met Police force decided they didn't want to pledge allegiance for the King. I suspect that should be a sacking matter. Johnny says... Johnny comments on our conversation with Alexandra just now. Alexandra, if you're just joining us, is, unless she's been sacked in the last 35 seconds, the editor of The Spectator in Australia. Regarding a worry about the world without the Queen, I agree with Alexandra in her comments about the monarchy and just how deep, broad and woven into our national fabric it is. The Queen was its figurehead, now it has another. Continuity is the key word. Thank you very much for that, Johnny. A great point to finish on, actually, I must say. Yes, the Queen was the golden thread that ran through the tapestry of our nation, and now King Charles continues that thread. For anyone who's maybe listening on radio, is in the queue there to pay their final respects to Her Majesty the Queen, good luck to you. I hope the weather holds out. I will be back tomorrow from 3 p.m. I had to double check then, but I'll see you then. Take care, everybody.
Hello, I'm Alex Deacon with your latest weather update. A dry, fine day for most on Thursday. There will be a few scattered showers around, chiefly across Scotland, and a strengthening and rather chilly northerly wind developing. That is pushing away this weather front that brought some wet weather early on across the far south. High pressure is moving in, but it's bumping up against low pressure, and the two are developing, causing this northerly breeze. That's bringing some showers across northern Scotland overnight. Otherwise, though, most places dry. Quite a lot of cloud across eastern England. That will help to keep the temperatures up here. Elsewhere, it is looking like a fairly chilly night, certainly compared to many recent nights. And across Scotland, rural areas will be well down into single figures. So a chilly-ish start to Thursday, quite a grey start for eastern England. Might just be 1 or 2 showers here. We'll certainly have some showers through the day across northern Scotland, some heavy ones likely, and maybe 1 or 2 filtering down through the central belt, and perhaps the odd shower for Northern Ireland. But most places won't see those showers, certainly for much of England and Wales, dry and bright. So a fresher feel, less humid.